Welcome to another episode of Fusing the Unfusable. Today we're lucky to have the CEO of HAL 8, Jerry.
Hey, what are we fusing today?
I don't know. There's a lot going on. Token 2049 in Dubai is nuts. I mean, the whole city's buzzing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. I can't believe it's sold out. Yeah, it's like absolutely insane. And traffic is crazy too. I'm wondering if it's caused by Token 2049.
It's probably not helping. We have traffic here. We have traffic. Jerry, we've been rubbing shoulders with staking nerds from across the globe. What project or insight surprised you the most at the staking summit?
So more generally speaking, what I find surprising at the staking summit is the depth of just products and services and companies that are there. The staking, the restaking, having Bitcoin staking opportunities through Babylon. There's Eigenlayer, there's Symbiotic, restaking on Ethereum. And then you have these TradFi people that we see them. It's like every conference I go to, I see more and more of traditional finance and Wall Street that's there. And the sophistication of it was really mind-blowing. Like down to risk management and different products and packaging and all these kinds of things. It was really astonishing me to see it.
It's shifting away from that degen. It's becoming more professionalized and more structured, it seems.
Absolutely. And I think more generally speaking in the market, the days of 100x and 1000x's and the meme coin madness and all that kind of stuff is going away, and it's maturing more towards established assets and yield on those assets. So providing yield through staking, for example, our shirts, right, is a very valuable service, I think, that blockchains provide, and that the market's hungry for yield-bearing assets.
It's a reward for what they're doing, right? They're securing, the people that stake are actually securing the blockchain, decentralizing it, and stake is the way of actually incentivizing them to do that. So it's by design.
Exactly. It also creates some interesting new vehicles where you don't have to decapitalize and you could just take the reward on stake, and then you could do degen things with that part of it and try to maximize that. So let's say we're a new chain. So of course, at the beginning, we're incentivizing staking. So our yield is 10%, but we also did it in a smart way where it's not 10% inflation, it's 10% yields for the amount staked. So if 10% is staked, it's 1% emissions. So it's really, really focused. And I think Solana's trying to do an improvement proposal to kind of get their blockchain to do something similar. Apex Fusion, we have the benefit of hindsight. We saw what worked, what didn't, and we're able to solve the problems that the other ones couldn't have foreseen. So in our case, we're out of the box. We're providing very healthy staking rewards, but without impacting inflation. So I think that's a very unique aspect of Apex Fusion.
We're a bit more sensible, I think, and conservative in our approach. And hindsight is always 20/20, right? But
sure.
It seems that new projects that come on board, they tend to have blinders on, and they lots of blind spots and gaps, and we're trying to avoid that. And I think our culture that we foster is this culture of this listening to everyone and taking people's opinions and into consideration. It's really a very powerful.
It's also that the team, it's not their first rodeo, right? So we've come from other big chains and learned and studied the markets for years, and then benefit of hindsight and using battle tested tech. So because it's an open source world, we could just take the best tech and then look at what the trade-offs were and take different decisions, which I think is quite unique.
Yeah, we are becoming open source specialists, aren't we?
That's right. Yeah. Well, we're expanding on the open source, library of our ecosystem.
It's incredible. So I don't know if this is how true this was, but crypto for some people was supposed to be a safe harbor, but it moves with the winds of macro news, tariffs, elections, inflation. What's your take? Are we at the mercy of the powers that be, or can we forge forward no matter what as an industry?
So, that's a very broad question. I think you have to probably separate Bitcoin from the rest of crypto to really understand that. So, Bitcoin is finding its fit. It's both a risk asset and a long-term. It's a short-term risk asset and a long-term store of value. So long story short, Bitcoin is Bitcoin ultimately. So you see very strange effects. In other words, when hedge funds need to cover positions on Monday, they'll sell Bitcoin over the weekend, and therefore it acts like a risk asset. But then when you have a regional banking crisis or a reordering of the world order, all of a sudden it's a safety, a flight to safety. So it acts like both of these things. So in terms of how Apex Fusion is going to view this long term, I think slowly everybody, I think MicroStrategy showed this way, is slowly going to go towards a Bitcoin standard in some fashion. So, my recommendation is that Apex Fusion ultimately would likely do that as well in some fashion, tether itself in some way to Bitcoin because of those very, very interesting characteristics. In any case, our industry does move with Bitcoin. So it's de facto, but being more focused and purposeful about it, I think will be interesting. And it's the whole UTXO and EVM marriage, right? UTXO is Bitcoin, not just as a technology, but as an asset class.
So this is, again, Apex Fusion is marrying UTXO and EVM, and like today, I was speaking to someone. I was saying we are expecting sparks to fly, but in a positive way, right? By connecting the two and merging them. So I think what's being done in Apex Fusion is quite interesting. But I like the way you presented the stability of Bitcoin, or the short term volatility versus the long term security of Bitcoin. I think a lot of people don't understand that. People are just transacting, buying, selling, without really having that kind of a strategy.
I think people, they're reductionist. They just want to put it in a box. Digital gold. Okay, it is partially digital gold, but it's not just digital gold. It's also digital energy. It's also, it's also technology. It's Bitcoin.
Economic power stored.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing. Let's talk about Apex Fusion a little bit more and veer away from the instability of politics and what's going on these days. What makes Apex Fusion different from all other crypto projects that are waving their hands right now and on stages all over Dubai?
So let's start with product market fit, and let's go to what problems we're solving. So in terms of product market fit, I think we're quite difficult on ourselves as Web3. I think a lot of people seem to think that the product market fit is only hopium and gambling. That's not actually true. I think Bitcoin, which now haven't looked at it recently, but is over 50% dominance, right? So half the market is Bitcoin, which has obviously found a product market fit. Another big portion are stablecoins, digital dollars, which is also, if it hasn't found its product market fit, it's finding it right now. And you see MasterCard using stablecoins and so forth. Then you got ones that need regulatory clarity to really take off. That's DeFi, RWAs, for example. There's a lot of experimentation, innovation in that. But without the regulatory clarity, mostly from the United States, they're kind of left still as kind of an internal economy. But once the regulatory clarity comes, then that's going to unleash those things. And ultimately, the use cases, I think, from a technological standpoint, there's trade-offs between UTXO and EVM. I think some use cases will be more better served by UTXO, and other use cases will be better served by account-based systems. So UTXO has more parallelism. It's more secure, generally speaking. It's more deterministic, but ultimately it's usually slower and difficult to program and so forth. So it's probably better served for settlement layers. That's why we chose it for our Prime network. RWAs probably makes more sense to be at a UTXO standard, for example. But when you have DeFi and dynamic things and things that are moving quickly, like high frequency trading and so forth, you can't really do that on UTXO. So that's where the account-based use cases come into play. That's an example of where use cases will land. So we've basically chosen UTXO for our settlement layer because that's the best choice for that, and it's a pure settlement layer. And then we have Vector, which is a fast, slightly more centralized UTXO chain for those use cases. And Nexus is a very fast EVM chain for
both of those are the programmable ones because the smart contract doesn't.
So let me get to what problems we're solving, which is the next part of the equation. So the problems that we're solving are twofold. One is liquid staking. So we've seen that most chains have created lockup periods and therefore require a liquid staking derivative for people who want liquidity, which creates centralization. By choosing Cardano as the base technology for the settlement layer, we've solved for that because that's native liquid staking at the protocol level, non-custodial, which is a unique, very unique characteristic. And that, I think, is lost on a lot of people. The other part of it is the competition between layer ones and layer twos. So Ethereum, Cardano, they put the execution layer on top of the main layer, even though Cardano had it perfectly read in the white paper to separate the layers, they didn't. And they have the same issue that to scale they need layer 2s, but then layer 2s will compete with the layer 1s. And then on top of it, Cardano put a treasury management system on top of it. So you got governance, gas, execution, and settlement all in one. So we separated those layers and created a neutral layer 1, does not compete with the layer 2s, which is quite unique as well. So those are the two big problems: native liquid staking and a neutral layer 1 not competing with the layer 2s, which is quite unique, which solves two of the biggest problems in our industry. Also, I've had a lot of debates about this, but I don't think UTXO suffers from the same MEV extraction that EVM chains do. So that has another big issue that's been solved by the UTXO side of the equation. So we have a very unique kind of proposition, taking the best technology, merging it together, separating it out, and creating a completely new value proposition, fusion. Put it together and you get a lot of energy out of it.
It's really compelling, and there's so much for everyone. You know, I was on a call today with a partner of ours who's pitching their technology, their blockchain technology, to a telecom provider, and they were discussing use cases for this private, possibly public blockchain to them. And at the end of the call, I jumped in and said, "Guys, by the way, do you know that because the guys they're talking to are private equity, said, you know that you can use blockchain to manage your investments and the settlement for your investors and give them liquidity by giving them a token."
Right.
And they went and they added it as a use case, which is really cool. So I think, you know, the RWA proposition, the DeFi, and everything that seems to be, having gone to the staking summit for 2 days and seeing all this activity, and then when you look at the banking world and the world of derivatives and foreign FX and all these things, to know that we could probably expect the same is going to happen with hopefully with our industry, with blockchain, because it makes all these processes so much better,
right?
More secure, more transparent, more traceable,
less fees,
less expensive, and quicker and global. Right. So funny enough, you know, we're going global with finance, and with trade and goods, we're going local, according to some leaders today. So it's interesting to see how the world is changing and how we're somehow linked to all that. Give us an inside scoop. What part of the roadmap, the Apex Fusion roadmap, gets your blood pumping, and why should DeFi degens care?
So I think kind of the hidden gem, and it comes to the culture, is that we're non-tribal, in the sense that, of course, we want maximum traffic and use cases on our chains, but through the use of bridging, we could also bring activity to other chains. So one thing that's coming is having Apex on Cardano, for example, and having our asset on the Cardano ecosystem and having it play around that ecosystem, or maybe we can put on Binance Smart Chain or Base or elsewhere, where it can have activity there, find its product market fit on other chains that are well established, have the liquidity already, and all that kind of thing. And that's not at all counterintuitive or counter to our ethos. In fact, it's in line with our ethos. And then once we can use those chains as kind of our proving grounds for things, and then migrate them back to Nexus and Vector where and when it makes sense. So we have that level of flexibility built into it.
So on the roadmap, other than Nexus and Vector, you're saying that there on the roadmap there are some bridges that are being considered to other chains.
Correct. So the first one that's coming out is Skyline, and that's not at all born out of Halate or the Foundation. That's one of our suppliers. I think you're going to interview him later today. Eternal, that saw the opportunity and said, we're going to build a bridge, and they're doing it. So that opens up the door to participation in the Cardano ecosystem. And that's very powerful. And again, unfortunately, the past has been the maximalism, where to win, someone else has to lose.
A zero-sum game.
Zero-sum game, exactly. Whereas we're in a network space. It's Metcalfe's law. It's in fact the opposite. It's a win-win. The more win-wins you create, the more value you bring to other chains, you'll bring to your own chain. And that's just the way we view things. So I think that's the hidden gem in my view. And that's what gets my blood pumping, because I don't need to deliver the entire roadmap, even though we're doing that within a reasonable time frame. Over the coming months, we'll have delivered most, if not all, of the roadmap. We don't need the roadmap to be delivered to unleash the potential.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see, even at this stage where we just have a layer one and it's just staking, the excitement that's happening around it, the reputation system's kicking in.
Exactly.
And we haven't even delivered Nexus, which is coming next, and then Skyline Bridge, or I don't know which one.
Well, it's on testnet. It's been delivered, but not in the mainnet fashion. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Jerry, thank you for taking the time. We know how busy you are with all these events and all these meetings.
My pleasure.
It's always good to have you on.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you.